Good morning, guys. How are you? Awesome. I think the energy can only go up from here, right? From this level with caffeine, or maybe you have to wait till happy hour and get some wine. So this topic is really close to me, which is slightly unusual because I don't have a typical marketing research background like most of you have. And I'm also guessing most of you have never heard of me. So I thought a short intro, some context setting as to why I love talking about this and why this is such an important topic for me, I thought would be helpful. So I started my career in an ad agency, and I'm glad to meet Angie, blast from the past. It was a small agency in Philadelphia. I worked as a brand planner, meaning I wrote creative briefs. And really, my job was about creative strategies and brand positioning. I fully expected that to be my career trajectory. And as you all know, we all have those unexpected twists and turns. And I found myself in Dallas working for Frito-Lay's Consumer Insights group. Now, this was in 2006. And at that time, Frito-Lay's Consumer Insights team was comprised of people who had degrees in marketing research from top schools. They'd worked on the supplier side, really solid MR credentials. And I was one of two people in that team who had absolutely no market research background. But my job required me to do tons of primary research studies. So I decided to adopt a very simple strategy. I would start every research project by confessing my complete ignorance. I would tell the supplier, I have no idea how you do this, so I'm really relying on you to be the expert. But what I will do is give you the business context for the study, and I'm also going to tell you, how I plan to apply the results, what kinds of actions and decisions we are going to take based on the study. So I thought this was a brilliant working relationship, right? I was not micromanaging them. I was kind of letting them do their own thing. I would do my own thing. It was going to be a marriage made in heaven, beautifully synergistic, symbiotic, all those beautiful words. So imagine my surprise when things didn't always work out the way I expected it to be. So I found that some suppliers really embraced this working relationship. And we went on to do some amazing work, very impactful. And others didn't quite take to it. Now, in all honesty, I'm sure they found me so frighteningly incompetent and inexperienced that they decided never again. And, but let's put that aside for a second. Being a brand strategist at heart, I really tried to figure out what is the difference between, one group of suppliers who to me, were breakthrough and magnetic. And I use those two words very, very purposefully. For me, breakthrough means you stand out in the sea of your competitors and peers. And magnetic means that I was compelled to work with them over and over again. And to me, those are two characteristics of an iconic brand, right? Being breakthrough and being magnetic. So being a brand strategist, I really pondered, what is it that makes one group different from the other? And to me, it came down to three things. So the first one was I found that the breakthrough magnetic brands, suppliers, really were good at answering this question, what business are we in? And they didn't define their business as, we're in the business of doing qualitative research or, doing analytics or what have you. They really defined their business at a much higher order level, meaning, they saw themselves as being in the business of influence or impact, right? So it was a much higher order level that they saw their business in. And in fact, a lot of the times, their definition of what business they were in aligned very closely to what I saw as my business, being in consumer insights, okay? The second thing which I think they did really well was they had a very clear definition of what success meant to them. And to them, success was my success, right? So these were the people who followed up 3 months, 6 months after the research was done and they would ask me, what did you do? What happened in the marketplace? Can you give us real data? Can you give us real results? Right? So they were incredibly proactive at finding out what happened as a result of the research, and they were also very proactive in figuring out and asking me what could we do better. Whereas for the other group, I felt like they were totally focused on delivering a very rigorous piece of research, right? So for them, success was doing a very buttoned up, meticulous, valid piece of study, doing a really good presentation, report out, and handing that off to the client. So that was success. So you can see how the two groups differed. And then the third thing which I felt really set the breakthrough and magnetic brands apart was they were very consistent, meaning my experience was the same regardless of who was on my research project, right? So sometimes, your project experience is only as good as the person you get assigned to it, and that is not a consistent experience from a client's perspective. But the breakthrough and magnetic brand, no matter who I worked with from that organization, I ended up getting an incredibly consistent experience. So I stayed with Frito-Lay's Consumer Insights Group for about 7 years, and 2 years back, I left and started my own consulting company, Jester&Genius, and I will save the name explanation for the Q&A. Since then, I find myself on both sides of the fence. I still do a lot of primary research on behalf of my clients, but I also consider myself a supplier. So of course, I do want to build a breakthrough and magnetic brand for myself as well. So what I'm going to do for the next 15 minutes is give you two frameworks that you can consider as you start defining your parameters as a breakthrough and magnetic brand. You can use either one framework or both if you're that enthusiastic. But let's go through that, and then we'll talk about what it takes to keep a breakthrough and magnetic brand, sustaining the fundamentals of a breakthrough and magnetic brand. Okay, so this is a framework that I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with. It is Simon Sinek's The Why, How, What framework. So what is the premise of this framework? All of us, all brands, all companies are very, very good at talking about what we do, right? We make potato chips, we make mousetraps, we do qualitative research. We're all extremely comfortable and good at talking about what we do. The problem is what we do is the least differentiating aspects of our brands and businesses. Because for every Lay's potato chip, there are hundreds of other potato chips. For every qualitative researcher out there, there are hundreds more. So what we do is not functionally differentiating. And yet we spend an inordinate amount of time focusing in our marketing efforts on exactly that. Okay? Fewer companies and fewer brands are good at talking about how they do what they do. And that is the core of your brand differentiation, right? How is your potato chip better than the other person's potato chip? How is your mousetrap better? How is your qualitative research better than the other person's qualitative research? That is the core of your brand's distinction. And still fewer companies talk about why they do what they do, right? Why are you driven to make a potato chip or do research? And very, very few companies, especially in our category, have that clarity of the why. Why are you compelled to do this? What drives you? Why are you excited to get out of bed and do the research and do your particular area of marketing research? So it's very important to have clarity around why. And my thesis here is that really strong marketing research brands market the why, not the what. And what is the difference between the two? So when you market the what, you're inviting clients to buy your services. Okay, that's a transaction. When you market your why, you're inviting clients to buy into what you are as a brand. And that's the basis of a relationship. Okay, and the difference between buying and buying into is night and day. Because buying is just transaction, and you're going to be fighting for one transaction after another. When clients buy into what you stand for, what your purpose is, you are now building a sustained, loyal, deep relationship with them. So that's why it's really critical to market at the level of the why, not the what. So that's the first framework. Another framework for your consideration is based on a story framework that we use with our clients to help them create brand positioning strategies. And it's based on a story framework. Okay? And this is an adapted version. This is not the full version. But the adapted version, I think, will be especially relevant for us here. So the first piece in this particular framework is defining your identity. Okay, so do you see yourself as a researcher, or do you see yourself as an innovator? Do you see yourself as a change agent? Do you see yourself as a teacher? Again, the importance here is define your identity at a higher level. Don't define yourself by what you do. Define yourself as, a mindset that you bring to the table every single time. Why is this important? Well, your identity totally drives the kind of talent you hire, right? The kind of culture you build. And all of that will either detract or ensure that consistency of experience that I was talking about before. So it's really important to have a higher order identity so that you can build that culture of a breakthrough brand within your company. The second piece in this framework is really articulating your only. So what do I mean by this? You should be able to complete a sentence. For instance, Jester&Genius is the only consulting company that blanks. Okay? So if you don't have an only, you're not a brand, let alone a breakthrough and magnetic brand. Now, this concept of only is adapted from a book called Zag, which I highly recommend. It's written by Marty Neumeier, and it's pretty brilliant. Very simple, but you'll actually spend hours, if not days and weeks, sometimes really sitting around the table with your core team trying to define your only. But it's a very, very valuable exercise. And finally, state your purpose, right? Which is, again, why are you in this business in the first place? What drives you? What change are you compelled to see? Why are you excited? You can see there are a lot of overlaps between the story framework and the Simon Sinek's framework, right? So the brand distinction and the purpose, a lot of overlaps. I'm just offering up two different ways of defining the parameters of your brand. You can really just do either one. But sometimes it just helps to have two ways in to see which ones your team feels comfortable working with. But you can really use either one. So that was the easy part. I say that very facetiously. We spend a lot of time, sometimes months, really articulating our purpose, our identity, and our only. But that is the easy part, because those are just words on a paper. At the end of the day, you have to live it. And there are some fundamentals, there are some pillars for living that brand and that vision that you've crafted on paper. So I think there are some 3 fundamental pillars for sustaining a breakthrough and magnetic brand. The first one, people. We are in the service industry. The people are the brand. They embody what the brand is all about, right? They embody your identity, your culture, your purpose, your only, and you're only as good as your weakest link. I like to share this anecdote. So last year, one of our clients was in the process of redesigning their website. And so we decided we're going to do a user experience study, before we revamp the whole thing, so that we could be very insights-led. So the digital agency decided, had a recommended supplier, and I hadn't worked with them before, but I trusted the recommendation and So we show up for the research, and we're sitting in the back room. And just to give you some more context, this client happens to be a nonprofit breast cancer organization. So as you can imagine, it's a very sensitive, emotionally charged topic. So we're sitting in the back room. The interviewer starts, asking the participant, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. And the lady just, starts tearing up because she's talking about all the loved ones she's lost to breast cancer. And suddenly, she just breaks down and starts crying. And to our utter horror, the interviewer does not even miss a beat, just turns the screen towards her and says, okay, so what do you think of this website? Horrifying. Needless to say, we did not allow that interviewer to do any more interviews. And I really questioned the competence of that particular supplier as a whole, because setting aside even empathy and humanity aside for a second, if you say you are an expert in user experience research, but you can't even respond to the experience a user is having right in front of you, well, that makes me really question what you're all about. So again, you're only as good as the people, your weakest link, and the people we hire, the people we work with in our company are the embodiment of our brand. So it's so important to hire the right people, give them the right training. Maybe it was just a question of she needed some training, though I still push back and say that had nothing to do with training. That was just sheer empathy. Anyway, you've got to train. You've got to make sure every person in your organization understands what you are as a brand. What is your purpose? What is your only? How are you different? And embody that. Because that one instance you don't embody it is that instance where you stop being a breakthrough and magnetic brand. So we can't afford to make errors like that. The second pillar, I think, that holds and sustains magnetic and breakthrough brands is partnership. So do you come to the table with a spirit of partnership? In fact, I would say you've got to come to the table with a spirit of leadership, right? Not as a research supplier, not as a project manager, but really bring that sense of leadership. Now, I will grant you that clients often don't extend this spirit of partnership and leadership. But you know what? But we aren't sitting around asking for permission. You've got to show up as a leader. You know your work, you know your brand, you've got to have confidence in that and show up as a leader. I love it when suppliers have really, and especially the breakthrough magnetic ones, have really challenged my own definition and scope of the project. They've pushed me to ask better questions. And we've had better outcomes, frankly, because if they hadn't come with that spirit of, I have an equal stake in this, I'm a leader, and I'm an equal partner in how this works out, we wouldn't have gotten to that. And that makes them incredibly magnetic for me. And the final thing is passion. I cannot even overstate the importance of this. It is such an intangible quality, but if you're not passionate about what you do, it shows, first of all, but it's really time to get another job, right? So you've got to have that sense of passion. Again, like I've worked with suppliers who are very buttoned up and clearly know their stuff and do extremely rigorous pieces of research, but they simply don't have the passion. That project is just another project, and it's successfully completed and they move on. Just the whole experience of working together is so much better when you're passionate. I'll share this somewhat shameful story about myself. After 7 years working in the snack category, I will admit I was a little jaded. So last year when I ended up doing another project with Frito-Lay, I really approached it with a sense of what can I possibly discover about this particular brand that 7 years of working on it had not already uncovered for me. And the supplier called me out on it. She said, Padmini, you just are jaded. you just are approaching this project feeling like I've seen this before, I've done this before, and you know that's not going to get us to that unlock. And that was great. I needed that kick in the pants, right? Because I was like, I was not bringing that spirit of passion to that project because I felt like, oh my God, like I've worked on this brand so many times before, there's just nothing new. And so had they, by the way. They had also worked on that brand a couple of times before, but they approached it as, this can again unlock possibilities. They came with such an open mind and with such passion that I loved it. And we actually ended up uncovering some really new, rich insights, which I wouldn't even have thought possible. But the point is that is the spirit of leadership and belief in what you do, that you can tell the client, hey, you can't afford to bring this jaded mindset. So I will leave you with this thought. I think for all of us, I'd really urge us to stop thinking of marketing to clients and really figure out a way how can we start mattering to them. And that's all I have. Yes.
Thank you very much. Just going back to your point when you said state your purpose and to pick one or the other, can you just give me an example again of what you meant by state your purpose?
Oh yes, exactly. So I'll give you an example from a couple of brand examples, right? So Apple's purpose, for instance, Apple is such a good marketing. So they're all about challenging conventions in the technology space, right? That's their purpose. That's what drives them. So it's a much higher order purpose. It has nothing to do with the actual products they make, but really their brand DNA is all about just challenging convention. I'll give the example of Cheetos. Cheetos is all about, hey, the world would be just a better place if we could all lighten up and have fun, right? Very simple. So again, defining why are you doing that, and then the snack or Apple's products become a way to express that purpose. Does that help? Yeah. Yes.
So what's the story behind the name?
Oh wow, I always get that. So I think part of it is it is they're borrowed from two archetypes. So there's the jester archetype and the genius archetype, and the jester is really the the person in the king's court who has the courage to expose blind spots and kind of get away without getting his head chopped off. So so that is sort of my personal value that as I get into consulting, I'm always going to be very honest and courageous to expose blind spots. And the genius is not about brilliance. It's really about offering a fresh perspective. So all the geniuses really have that to offer is the ability to make us see things in a fresh light and create change. So for me, it's a part of my own personal values is having the honesty and the courage to speak up and say the truth, but then create change. So that's the name, yes.
Thank you. Okay. I have a question about the who, what, where.
Yeah, why? Yeah.
When you have a new service that is unknown,
yeah,
does that change things? Because don't you have to spend more time on the what then?
Yeah, yes.
But when you're competing against a lot of other people who have similar things, then you have to focus on the why and the.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Or?
Yes, I would. I think, but that is so rare. That is so rare. Like truly breakthrough, that new to the world thing. Absolutely, you should talk about the what. But I would still say, still like start laddering it up sooner rather than later. I think a lot of times people just stay stuck at that level, and even 5 years down the line, you believe I'll just take an example, and I don't know if anybody is represented here in this group, like neuroscience and neuromarketing. It was new, I think brand new to the world maybe 5-7 years back. It's not. There are more players. So what makes you different from the other person? I think the problem is when you just stay rooted in that what and don't start elevating the marketing efforts. then it becomes a problem. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing, let me add. And sometimes, we do consulting work with startups, and as with all startups, they absolutely believe their idea is new to the world, right? Absolutely, especially the tech startups. And what I've always told them is, it's not about what you do. You have to position yourself as what you enable your consumers to do. And again, there is a huge difference between that. So you can still talk about your new to the world technology, but that in itself is not interesting to the clients or to your end consumers. So again, it's not about what you do, it's what you enable your clients or your consumers to do. And that is the difference. And I say this every time, but the tech startups will insist, but this is so new, we just have to focus on the technology. And I just have to tell them it's not interesting and meaningful in and of itself. It's got to be the means to an end. So. Thank you.